right?
Okay. All right. Welcome to IoT Coffee Talk. We got Marc, we got Stephanie, we got you
What is
covered.
a guitar? What is who's playing today?
We're gonna do air guitar. Yeah.
We could dub some music in later.
People are getting so disappointed with this episode because they're not hearing live music, or gosh. Let me see if
the talent of Leonard Lee, and then if you play something, you have to do the copyright thing because I do not own the rights to this music.
Oh, right. I know. I'm looking around my office.
We should call it the episode with no music, and that's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, as if we have electric guitar laying around, or maybe I've got a drum set or something. We can go crazy. No telling. So yes, hello everybody. Lots of exciting stuff coming up here soon in the IoT world, with IoT World next week in Austin, with AI and quantum, I think, right? Something like that, mashing them together. So
yeah, an event within an event.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, how big that event is. I know we've all been to a few different events now over the last month or two, and of varying sizes. I'm not going to name any names of events where it's like, oh yeah, there's going to be 5,000 people here, and there was like 900 people or whatever.
And what do you expect from this Texas event? Is it going to be interesting, or from the agenda? What's your
it looks pretty interesting. But you bring up a good point about, we've been doing so many of these IoT conferences now for so long, and you're wondering, is there anything left to talk about? I almost feel like Rick Bellotta, like back when we started doing our coffee talk, and after a while he was like, you know what, we probably can just do it maybe once a month. I think we've already talked about everything. There's nothing left.
But we always talk about stuff that's not necessarily IoT related. And sometimes it makes it interesting because, let's face it, sometimes our industry does get stagnant, like I was saying, does get boring. And so you want to hear what's new, what's going on out there that I haven't heard of. And Marc, like you got your hands like knee deep in. I saw you got some Halloween projects coming up. Like, that's cool. What's that all about?
Yeah, Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween. Yeah, the thing is, here in Spain, at least, it's still not a real party, Halloween, yet. So it's coming, sadly, because there was another traditional party here in Catalonia. We don't have like the traditions that you have with the what do you say?
Trick or treat.
Trick or treat, or do you still have that in where you live, or?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we still don't have these at that level, or as I have seen in the TV shows, right? But it's getting here as a global party, and I started to see more and more IoT projects related with Halloween. Maybe it could be fun to have like a one-click deploy project that you can put in front of the door of your house.
Yeah,
children visiting your
and
house, right?
Yeah,
so just reduce friction, so anyone can have a connected school or something at home.
There's a lot of crazy decorated porches, and some of them are automated. They put some really cool stuff together. But like here in Texas, we're so close to Mexico that Dia de los Muertos is still celebrated in San Antonio. There's a ton of events all around locally here. So, which is a little bit, it's a lot different than Halloween, but honoring all of those that have passed away. But so we kind of have a little bit of a multicultural celebration here. Some folks celebrate Halloween. Some folks will celebrate Dia de los Muertos. But
because Texas is a lot more like España and Mexico. So
it's Texico.
Texaco. Exactly. That's good stuff.
That's a good one. Yeah, we celebrate, same, right? Well, everyone celebrates the same, but not with we used to don't do these Halloween spectacular things here.
Right.
But yeah, so let's use it as an opportunity, right? And try to bring the IoT as well here.
Yeah.
If we have to do it.
Absolutely.
So is this IoT is scary? Is this the IoT is a very scary episode
It could
without
be.
music?
So we used to do the IoT happy hour at Balena
Yeah.
this year, and we had a couple of Halloween episodes, and it was really interesting to see what the community was developing, like a big school with some eyes that were following you.
Oh,
So with some artificial intelligence and some candy delivers, that detected people and just deliver candies, and there were some interesting things.
That's
I'm
cool
sure.
stuff.
I'm sure that you can play as well with the lights.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And I've seen then who was from Blues Wireless who did like a really a connected skeleton that just pop ups when you appear. So you can play with some AI and edge computing for Halloween as well.
Maybe they can use the Ming stack.
Yes.
I was on A&M's campus last week, and I got to go do a tour of, it's an up and coming cobotics lab. And I got to see a lot and actually go speak with some of the students that were developing different things. And I think, they had a lot of cool robots in there, from big ones all the way to small ones that are going to be roaming all over campus and doing different things. But a lot of the work and the efforts for them building on top of the robots that they've already completed is, number one, they're like improving the hardware components, or if it's vibration, or if it's routing using GPS coordinates to go from one place to the other. But on the other hand, it's a lot of software, a lot of coding. They're programming a lot of different things for the robot to do and improving its capabilities. So it's kind of ongoing projects, but learned a lot from those kids. Those kids are doing a lot more than, probably some of those in the industry or think that they're doing. But it's pretty cool to see the younger generation getting really excited about, machine learning and leveraging and using robots for different things. But I'm excited to see what they do with that. They've worked with Texas Instruments in the past for some of their other laboratories, but they're currently looking for a big vendor to come in and, sponsor or be a part of that. They've got quite a few robotic companies that are providing the kits, at no charge for the students, but there's still a lot of things that they're developing and working out. So if you want to know more about that, let me know. I will.
But actually, this is a super interesting topic, Stephanie, because last year I have a very good friend who's a technology teacher here in nearby Barcelona, and it's interesting because he was explaining. Give me a sec.
Kids.
I have my kid here showing you. Look at this.
Cool. Hi.
Show your teeth.
Let
Show
me
your
see those teeth.
Show your teeth. No. So sorry for that.
Oh, that's great.
Look at this.
That's the Dracula teeth.
Yeah, Dracula. So he was explaining something super interesting, that it's what is a robot, right? So if we define it, so do we need, so one thing that he was explaining is that he hates the robots, and he was explaining technology, and he hated like this shaped humanoid thing that we call robots, because sometimes it's not anything can be a robot, right? It's something that has an automatization process and that solves something, right? So it was really interesting how he built all this theory or all of his technology, explaining that he's building robots, but actually with no human shapes, or with no cars, no wheels, no arms, and anything can become a robot.
That's cool.
Yeah, all the robots that I was looking at in their lab, they all had some kind of human-looking element, whether it was an arm or, some of them not necessarily, more look like vehicles, like wheels. But they had one that kind of looks more human-like, that's focused on patient monitoring and providing healthcare services in remote areas. And that one probably looked the most human, but most of them look more like vehicles or miniature like hubs with wheels, I mean, and a few of them had some arms on them, not necessarily looking like human arms, but more of a machine arm. But yeah, I mean, they could be anything. I think that folks though have a theory that robots, they look like people, but I'd say most of them don't really have that much of a look.
Yeah, one of the founders of Arduino explained once that he was sick of receiving projects or comments from companies who were building projects with Arduino, and 80% of them were having wheels or arms or legs or something, or like with this. No, when we think on a robot, no, this is like what it comes to our mind. No, usually it's a humanoid shape, right?
Right.
So he was like, I don't want to do any more projects that include wheels or the type of robots that we have in mind anymore. So anything else that it's coming to Arduino, I'm happy to collaborate with, but not with the concept of robots that we have in mind. And I don't want to work on that anymore. So I think it's also good, to put children towards that type of innovation. So a robot can be, and this guy is called as well Marc. So he made this guitar. Do you remember they show an Arduino guitar?
Yeah.
So he was like, no, I want to show technology with the music because I think a lot of things can be done and automatized with the music. And he cool. Doesn't want to do robots. If the robot is a solution for a question that children have, then he's gonna do robots or vehicles or something like that. But if not, there is no need for a kind of the robot that we talked about.
Right.
Yeah, and you also have like the whole concept of RPA, robotic process automation, and there are no machines involved. It's all software. But the whole concept behind RPA is look at the most mundane tasks that humans have to perform, and most of it's all administrative type things, database type things, data entry, and all of that ends up being automated through software, and that's RPA. But they call that robotic process automation. It has nothing to do with any mechanical hardware piece of equipment. Well, I'm sure there's some computers involved, but it's all primarily driven through software. So we have to kind of take a step back and start looking at, to me, it's automation, right? What are we automating? And that's something that we talked about last week. We were at 5G Americas. Leonard and I were there. And one of the things that I was speaking with, we had a whole session on AI, which is really more around machine learning. But I was like, look, in the States specifically, there's a gap anywhere from 5 to 10 million. I think it's growing we don't have a gap of a shortage of workers. And so it's like, do we end up leaning on automation, whether that's hardware or software or both? Even more so because we can't, these are skilled positions. It's not entry level positions. So how do we, what do we do to fill that worker shortage gap? And so it's almost like, I think we're going to get to a point, later next year, where we will be forced to look to automation, to look to technology, to look to software, to look to our developers to do more, because we don't have the workers and we're not able to fill the positions. And then, like we said, Rob, there's certain high level positions that they still need humans for, right? What do we do about those positions?
Yeah, that's a good point. I find myself working on so many different things. I'm kind of scatterbrained, I guess, working on lots of stuff in parallel, trying to do a book, been building this digital twin platform thing. But I would also say there's one other thing, I've been, super focused on lately, talking to people applying IoT to sustainability or how it can help. All these companies now like have an ESG person or department, and or before that they had like this EHS or whatever, health safety kind of thing like that. So I've been super focused on that. But then there's this weird outlier thing that I've been dabbling in the background. I could almost call it my stealth startup. It has nothing to do with saving the planet at all, but it has a lot to do with what Stephanie's talking about. And it goes back to an article I wrote couple of years ago, I don't know. I used to fly to Sweden every month, and I don't know, sometimes something weird pops in your head. And so I'm on the airplane, and something popped, and it was about digital twins. It was about labor shortages, and it was about RPA. Actually made me think of this. The name of the article and the genesis of this stealth startup, I guess it doesn't sound very stealth now. The name of the article was, your next employee might be a digital twin. And I started digging in and writing about how that would work, because I do hear about, I spend time, if I think about, so I try to stick to, if you guys, we talk about the whole digital twin and where that came from and everything. And it's this Dr. Michael Greaves. And while lots of people have gone in crazy directions with digital twins, I'm trying to stick kind of close to where, he's the guy who really got this thing going. And he only just talks about these three things. There's the digital twin prototype, or sometimes you can call it the digital twin model, which could be the asset class, could be the 2018 Ford F-150 pickup truck. And then there's the digital twin instance, an actual 2018 Ford pickup truck on the road. And there might be a million of those. And they all inherit their properties and everything from the prototype or the model. And then he talks about the digital twin aggregate, which is where you are able to take the data from all of those 1 million 2018 Ford F-150 pickup trucks that are all of the same type. They all inherit from the same type, and say, what's interesting about them? Or do I find problems or whatever that's consistent across that? Well, this whole idea, and so I've always explained to people using cars or whatever to just do that. And then sometimes I've done digital twins, and I talk about a patient in a hospital. Why can't the person be a digital twin? Why can't the heart be a subsystem and the lungs? And we use sensors and devices on behalf of the digital twin, that's you, the physical twin, rather. And then somewhere along the way, that mashed up with RPA, how we're using, I love the robotic process stuff. It's basically, it reminds me of screen scraping, which we did a million years ago, when you would have to be really old to remember this transition to the PC and client-server computing in a world where there was still 3270 terminals that talked to mainframes, and they started using Visual Basic and stuff in the 90s to screen scrape to make a pretty Windows space on top of that. But RPA is screen scraping, and basically because tens of millions of Win32 apps were built in the 90s, running on Windows PCs, like Windows 95 and stuff like that. And that's kind of what runs most companies today. And so RPA was automating, well, I know this person's job is to do click, 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 and enter this or whatever and stuff. And can we automate that? Which is cool. So I was sitting there thinking, digital twins, what if the digital twin model or prototype is a role at a job? So like when I do talks, I talk about weird corporate things like jobs to be done. I forgot the name of the management person theorist who wrote the whole theory of jobs to be done, but it was decades ago. And basically, and then there's Peter Drucker, measure to manage to improve, that kind of thing. And I kind of follow those things to say, this is why we're doing IoT or twins or automation or things like that. And so I was sitting there thinking, well, okay, if I define a role like salesperson, and why couldn't I define that role at a company of salesperson, and all the properties of that model of salesperson are all the things that they have to do. It's almost like a manual, your job description. And you could also, you could have APIs. We use APIs to connect to things. Well, why don't you use APIs to connect? This salesperson is supposed to work with customers, this department over here, whatever.
You're defining how we work at Balena, basically.
Yeah. And then when it comes time, and so we always think about, there's a job to be done. Like when you start a company, you start it because you've got an idea of some product or service, and that you're going to sell to make money, and that's how you're going to have a business. And then we don't just hire people. We say there's a role, a job to be done. I need this list of tasks to be accomplished. And they're either accomplished one time, which maybe I just get a contractor, or it's something I have to do over and over again. I repeat these tasks all the time. And typically, I would hire a human to do these tasks. And these tasks all kind of look similar, and I put them together into a role or a job that says, you are a secretary, or you are a salesperson, or you are a marketing executive. So I'm imagining, without giving away my whole stealth startup here, I've got some domain names, but you can imagine some dystopian corporation type thing. And it's all about actually HR, and it's using this. But yes, where a whole company would use this technology and define all the roles, and they may choose to hire a person, or they may choose to hire a digital twin to do the job. Because as RPA has shown us, there are some jobs that could totally be done in software on a computer. And there's other jobs that maybe with IoT and APIs and connectivity and automation can be done cyber physically, right? And then there's jobs that we still hire people for. And I remember chatting with different people, and they're like, well, what if they hire a real person? I guess they don't need your stuff. And I go, maybe. But then I was thinking, if you're an employee at a company and you've taken this role, it's almost like a personal digital assistant, like your Palm Pilot or whatever, but it's with you to keep you on track. It's this digital thing that says our meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. Wow. And do I want to upgrade? I love it. A little window popped up on my screen.
I see it.
But then, Rob, can I hire Rob Tiffany's digital twin?
Right.
This may be interesting. It's better than even you use it for yourself, that I use it for Rob Tiffany's digital twin for myself.
Yeah.
Maybe this is even better, right?
Yeah.
And Rob, you mentioned about the people component. It's funny because some of the advancements that have been made in human resource management is people learning people's behavior, characteristics, and starting to categorize them and put them in these similar, and where are they similar in terms of their behaviors and how they might perform based on all of these human elements. And, they're essentially kind of I'm like, does that stuff become less and less important? You know what I mean? Because it's like they keep going down that path to help source and try to align, this person's perfect for this position. She's more of an organized, right brain, whatever. But does some of that stuff go away? And then the other thing is, we talked about last week as well, is the digital twin versus simulation. Folks really get that confused, right? We're simulating something. Digital twin is like far more advanced, and folks start to think that that's the same thing, and it's not.
Well, actually, I have a comment about that too. As since I built the system, just like Marc has built, you have a system that's kind of event driven. There's the twin that says this is the thing, the machine, and here's its properties and the names of those properties, which are data points probably from sensors coming in. And if I'm using the things.io, telemetry is coming in, and there's an event that happens. And so you can imagine, to your point about simulation, could you use the same digital twin IoT platform they're using at runtime in production? Could you also use it for simulation? The answer is yes, because what you do is when new data comes in, your software looks at the new incoming data points, and it looks at the twin of what's coming in. At first, because you're doing lookups in milliseconds. You're walking a tree of a database or an in-memory structure, and you say, data's coming in from device 123. What's device 123? Oh, I just looked it up. That's what it is. And its properties tell me that it's got temperature, humidity, blah, blah, blah. And here's the names. And it tells me what to look for, because those names are going to be coming across in the JSON payload. The next step, though, is then where you say, well, what do I expect those values to be? Like KPIs, red, yellow, green, kind of things like that. If it's a normal value so I could assign KPIs for every individual data point. I could also assign what to do based on that. What event? What action do I take? And so anyway, you're doing all this stuff as data's coming in. I look at the real stuff. I look at what it should be. If it's not what it should be, I take action, whatever. So simulation, use the same system, except you send in synthetic, fake data into the system and see how it behaves. And that's kind of a way of doing a simulation. You know, I have a digital twin of a giant windmill thing for electricity. And I have all its dynamic properties, which are like sensor kind of related things. I have static properties, how tall it is, how far can it bend when the wind's blowing, things like that. And you send in synthetic data into your live IoT digital twin system and see how it behaves. And so it's like putting something in a wind tunnel, you know, like when we test aerodynamics on a car or a plane. So stuff like that.
I like the concept and the idea, but I definitely think that we will be at a point where we're hiring the digital twin, or that's just part of what we will. And the labor shortage is the big issue. Does it get worse? Where are we at with that? If they start to look at the number of positions that are opening versus the birth rate. And in the States specifically, our birth rate continues to go down in terms of how many kids we're having per family. And so we're not essentially producing enough people to fill positions.
Right.
And the gap will widen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really interesting because everybody's still going up. Well, not everybody's going up, but you know what I mean? Globally, we're still going up to maybe close to 10 billion-ish by 2050. But then you're right. Then statistically, we're going to start seeing a drop off. And drop off in birth rates are associated with, it's all about women being lifted up, actually, primarily in the world. Affluence, being able to have a job, more money. You know, it turns out there's a correlation between how many kids babies a woman's having is totally directly related to their status in life and money and jobs and things like that. And so as we've lifted more people up around the world, we're having fewer babies. So yeah, it's interesting. It's funny though, at the same time, we do have a lot of people around, you think. And the hard part will be, you know, if it's this idea of mine that I'm working on with the digital twin as an employee, for instance, I don't know how it'll work, because the two places where we have real shortages, and it's because people don't want to do the work. No, young people are not interested in working in a factory, and young people are not interested in working on a farm. And those are our two biggest labor shortage areas right now. Everyone thinks they're going to work in an office and have espresso brought to them, and it's going to be nice and things like that. And, you know, that's not the whole world for everybody, right? And so we need those jobs to be done as well. IoT can help, but I really think it's going to be serious, actual real robots that actually do real things in order to fill those jobs.
And those are more skilled positions, right? I think that I'm not as worried about the early, manual labor. Some things, it just depends on the generation and what the job is. Like, they're still struggling in retail here in the States. They can't find folks to want to work retail, but they're willing to train and pay more and all of this, and they're still having problems. So yeah, I think that we've got a couple of different forces on skilled workers versus non-skilled.
What were you thinking, Marc?
Yeah, here in Europe, the problem that we have, we don't have a lot of young people compared with the old people. So one of the more than industry or farms, we are scared about nurses. You call it nurses or people who take care of old people. Mm-hmm. In hospitals or residences, and this is probably one of the places where you don't want robots.
And at the same time, our aging population, they're living longer, so we need more skilled workers for the aging population. We're having the same issue in the States. Folks are living longer, and there's not as many RNs and folks to take care of.
So such a good point. These are such good topics, because you're right. All this great medicine and technology helping people to live longer, and we're having fewer babies. And so you're having, over time, a bigger block of our population is old. versus young to take care of them. And when I was working at Hitachi, I spent a lot of time in Japan, and it's really extreme there. Very old population in Japan. And that's why they're working. Back to Marc's first talk point today, in Japan, that's why they build so many robots, humanoid robots, companions. Also, just a companion, sometimes to talk to an old person. Turns out maybe one of the worst diseases in the world is actually loneliness, as it turns out. And for old people who are alone in living in a place, in a room, whatever, I saw building prototypes of digital companions that just somebody to talk to, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, depression sets in. Relates back to their physical health. They start to kind of go down from there, and especially those that have lost a spouse, there's always a correlation.
Yeah,
one spouse is lost, the other one has a hard time making it. But we're less than a minute. Rob, you want to wrap it up? We've had some good content here. I think we have a book here. There's a whole book here in the making, and a business.
I think there's a book. I think there's a company. I think there's technology. There's a vampire. Happy Halloween, everybody.
They want to suck your blood.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on IoT Coffee Talk / digital twins / robots / vampires and population demographic show. Check us out at iotcoffeetalk.com. Go subscribe on YouTube, ring that bell, listen to us wherever you get podcasts, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Out. Adios.
Adios. End of file.